Hello and welcome back to yet another video on this channel. So in today's video we will be discussing modern Indian English poetry, that is Indian English poetry written after the year 1950. So as we already know, the differences between themes are quite apparent if we compare the pre-independence Indian English poetry with post-independence Indian English poetry. So in this particular video, we will be discussing the key features or key themes which are present in the post-independence Indian English poetry. So the first important feature is again the multilingual influences. So modern Indian poets often draw inspirations from multiple languages and cultural traditions. The rich linguistic diversity of India is reflected in their work, with poets incorporating elements from various Indian languages and dialects into their English verses. See, for example, before independence, there was not much mobility was not there, but after independence, poet saw some freedom in mobility all over the parts of India. So that is why we can see whenever an Indian writes about something, whenever he is writing in in one language, there are knowingly or unknowingly there are influences of other languages as well. So this exclusivity of language is no longer relevant. So this cultural diversity or the linguistic diversity, as we call it, is apparent in in the literature of modern age as well. So for example, if a person is writing in Gujarati, some elements of Marathi, some elements of Punjabi might be there in his poetry as well. So again, these multilingual influences are a result of a modernized or a globalized India, as we call it. So apart from that, we have another feature, another very important feature is identity and hybridity. So these contemporary Indian poets frequently explored questions of identity, migration, and cultural hybridity. Their works grapple with the complexities of being Indian in a globalized world, navigating the intersection of traditional values and modern influences. See, for example, when India was colonized, a different kind of culture, a different kind of ideology was being imposed on them. They were exposed to some different ideas which were not present in India before the advent of Britishers or these colonial powers. So, because of that, there was an identity crisis. Because Britishers or these Europeans portrayed themselves as superior to Indian culture, as superior to Indian civilization. So, that is why these Indians felt humiliated. And there was, even after these Britishers left India, even after getting independence, these Indians were uh, feeling inferior to to this western culture, to these western languages. So that is why we see a kind of question of identity and question of cultural hybridity. So because of feeling humiliated of our own identity, these Indian people, they were adopting some parts of western culture, to be able to equal to those people. So that is why a kind of hybrid identity, a kind of hybrid culture can be observed in the literature of the modern India or the modern English literature as well. See, because whatever we think, whatever the circumstances are there in the society, that again are naturally portrayed, are naturally communicated in the literature as well. So, as we call it, literature as the mirror of society. Again, so whatever is happening in the society, whatever the society is thinking, that is again is portrayed in the literature as well. So, this identity crisis of Indian society, this hybrid culture of Indian society, is again portrayed really beautifully in the literature of uh, modern poetry as well. Then there are social and political engagement. So many modern Indian poets used their craft as a medium for social and political commentary. See, for example, there was a lot of regulation on literature, on poetry, on novels. When India was under colonization, they were restricting, they were banning some novels which were against them. They were restricting, they were censoring the literature which was speaking against them. But after the departure of these Britishers, after the independence of India, these writers, these Indian writers, they got a lot of freedom. There was no censorship now. They could write about whatever they want. So these writers, they started to highlight the social issues or the political or economic issues of India through their poetry, through their novels, or any kind of literature for that matter. So they started addressing pressing issues such as gender inequality, caste discrimination, environmental concerns, and socio-economic disparities, contributing to a broader dialogue on contemporary Indian society. So another reason for this social and political engagement is that uh, after the departure of Britishers, Indians started to focus more on education. So many Indians were started to get educated. So that is why they started to portray their emotion, their concerns, their problems through the medium of literature. So that is why we see many of such social and political issues were being discussed through literature. So another important feature is the advent of post-colonial themes. So what do we mean by post-colonial themes? So this legacy of colonialism is a recurring theme in modern Indian poetry. So as we have already discussed, this legacy or this history of colonial past is something that India cannot do away with. Is something that India cannot completely detach with, because this is our past, right? We cannot deny it. So we have to eventually accept our past. But when we say accepting our past, we do not mean that we are completely accepting whatever they have done to us. Okay, so in post-colonial literature or in post-colonial themes, what do? We question our masters, we question our colonizers about whatever they have written about us. We question that. For example, when these Britishers were writing about us, when we did not have education, we were illiterate, and we could not write for ourselves, these people were writing for us. And in their writing, they have presented an incorrect representation of the Indians. They have presented Indians as barbaric, as uncivilized, as as ungoverned people, right? So when these Indians started getting educated, when they were free, when India became free after 1947, they started questioning these British authors. They started questioning these British stereotypes about India. So this is again post-colonial themes are again a really important feature of this modern Indian poetry or modern Indian literature as a whole. Then we also see some global perspectives. So, what are these global perspectives? Modern Indian poets exhibit a global consciousness engaging with international themes and ideas. Their works often transcend geographical boundaries, reflecting a broader awareness of global issues and a willingness to participate in global literary conversation. See, for example, India, when it was in the hands of Britishers, India had no identity of their own, right? They could not communicate with other countries. But when India got independence, they started trade relations or some other kinds of relations with other countries, and Indians naturally they migrated to other countries. So these Indians they were exposed to the cultures, to the values of other countries as well. So when they were migrating, when they were shifting to other countries, with them they also carried forward their Indianness, their Indian culture. So this was again a medium of the spread of Indian culture to other countries. So when these diasporic writers, when they write literature, when they write novels, poetries, they communicate a different kind of narratives. For example, they will mix together the Indianness and the Americanness or the Europeanness wherever they have migrated. They will mix both these identities and they will create something unique, something which is relevant to Indians and as well as to the people of that country, to the whole world as well. See, for example, we see authors like Arundhati Rai, Kiran Desai. Yes, these authors have created narratives which are relevant not only to India but to the whole world. They explore issues which are relevant to each and everybody, not just towards India. So, this global literary conversation started taking place only in the recent time, only in the modern age, only in the modern English literature. Then we see a kind of experimentation with form and style. So, contemporary Indian poets, known for their innovative use of poetic, are known for their innovative use of poetic form and style. They experiment with traditional structures, employ free verse, and incorporate elements of oral traditions, creating a diverse range. See, for example, traditionally speaking, while writing poetry or while writing a novel for that matter, there was a predefined structure that poetry should be written like this only, or novel should be written like this, and this only. But with the advent of modernism, with the advent of new thoughts, people started questioning that. These writers started questioning that, and they created their own new structures that will accommodate them. Okay, they started creating their own structures. For example, we see the advent of free verse or blank verse, where we do not follow any rhyme scheme or any meter. So that naturally gives more freedom to these authors to express their thoughts, emotions, and ideas more freely, more conveniently. So apart from that, we also see some elements of oral tradition. So see, oral tradition is something that was forgotten, that was not considered as literature before in the traditional academics. But with the advent of modernism, with the advent of new ideas, these oral traditions also found their way in the mainstream literature. And these oral traditions were also being portrayed in the mainstream literature. So it created a diverse range, a diverse area for Indian literature to explore and to grow. So that is why we see the growth of Indian English literature. It grow exponentially after the independence, right? We see many authors coming up, and they also got some international acclaim as well. So apart from that, we also see cultural synthesis. So what is that? Modern Indian poetics, modern Indian poets frequently engage in synthesis of cultural elements, blending traditional Indian motifs with contemporary global influences. This fusion of cultural aesthetics results in a unique poetic voice that captures the essence. See, as we have discussed the migration of Indians, so when the both these cultures are amalgamated, when both these cultures are mixed together, we find a new kind of culture which is hybrid, which has the qualities of both these cultures. So this is again uh, in order to relate to this contemporary global audience, these global influencers really are really important. We see authors like Amitav Ghosh who have incorporated the Indianness of India, and again the global perspective, the global ideas as well, the ideas of the Western world as well. So with this amalgamation, with this mixture of both these identities, we find a new kind of identity. We find the emergence of a new kind of literature that is global, that is not limited to a particular country, but rather is a fusion of cultural aesthetics. We see people who hail from Western culture and people who come from Indian or traditional culture. We see their union, we see their amalgamation, and that is how both these culture are portrayed in a beautiful way, and that again captures the essence of the modern world, and eventually it creates a unique poetic voice. Yes, and we also see another feature of modern Indian English poetry is voices of marginalized communities. That is again really important. So what is that? There is a growing trend in modern Indian poetry to amplify the voices of marginalized communities. Poets address the experiences of those on the fringes of society, providing a platform for the expression of diverse perspectives and challenging societal norms. See, for example, in 1960s, we see the rise of Dalit movement in Maharashtra. Okay, for example, we should consider that Dalits are a community which were denied of their right, which were being discriminated for centuries. Okay, for centuries together they were discriminated. They did not get any education. They were always considered as a marginalized community. And the same goes with tribal communities as well. But what happened with the advent of 1960s? They started writing about their issues. These Dalits in Maharashtra, they started writing about, some writers came up and they started writing about their own issues. And with that we see the rise of Dalit literature. So what is Dalit literature? It is nothing but capturing the ethos, capturing the struggle of these people, the suppression and oppression of these people which was going on from centuries. So when these people started coming up, when these people started speaking up for themselves, we see a different kind of voice in Indian English poetry. We see a different kind of representation of these people in Indian English poetry. So again, putting at the center of putting at center these marginalized communities, again really important to be an inclusive society. So again, these literary movements are not limited on paper only. These movements are not limited on the bookshelves, on the libraries. They have some actual effect. They can actually transform the society. See, for example, this Dalit movement to an ethos, led to some changes in the society of Maharashtra. So that is how we can see this marginalized community, they started writing for themselves. And lastly, in the last section of this video, we see another feature of modern English poetry, that is the individualism and subjectivity. So what is that? Okay, contemporary Indian poets often explore personal and subjective experiences. Their poetry reflects a heightened sense of individualism, delving into personal emotions, relationships, and introspective reflections on the self. See, for example, this feature is again directly influenced from the time of Renaissance. So, what was one of the key features of Renaissance? Yes, it was a revival of literature, revival of classical learning, all that. But apart from that, it was also about individualism. So again, what is individualism? Putting human beings, putting a particular individual at the center of the world is nothing but individualism, right? That is the basic concept behind individualism. So what is the connection between individualism and literature? So, in this literary movement, they started to talk about a particular individual, a common human being. So, the issues of human beings, the issues of a common person, a common worker, they were being discussed. So, the themes of this literature were not about, the literature was not about kings, about battles, about these big things, about these authoritarian people. It was about the common Indian, it was about the common people of India. So that is again moving away from subjectivity, moving away from these big things, big events in history, big events in literature. This these poets started focusing on individual problems, on individual growth of people. That is again another important feature of modern Indian poetry, modern Indian literature as a whole. So I think we should stop here. I think we have focused on these issues for quite some time now. If you have any doubts regarding these issues, you can comment down and also tell me on what other topics you would like to see videos on. Thank you so much for watching.